What kind of person are we if we have no meaning in our life? Now, I just saw a statistic that those who declare themselves to be of no religious affiliation, nothing, is at 28%. 28% in the country. You know what the next religiously affiliated group is? Catholics at 20%. Then the rest of everybody falls in underneath. That means that nearly a third of this country has people who don't believe in anything religious. It's interesting to note, and this is proven and backed up by statistics and by studies of competent people in sociology and psychiatry and in theology, that those who abandon religion increase threefold their depression, their anxiety, they become self-absorbed, they become selfish, and they can't see their way to helping other people. So therefore, they lack charity and any effort to help those who are in need. Oh, they're willing to protest. They don't usually know what they're protesting. But they have no sense of charity. When we abandon religion, not some senseless, mindless spirituality that people cling to these days. Something with purpose, something with direction, something with value, something with ethics, something with morality, something that has virtue in it. We become people of fate. We sound like Job in the first reading. My life is a drudgery. Now granted, the devil was allowed to do quite a few things extensively to his family and kill them all off, and he felt pretty abandoned by God, yet he never talked ill against God. He never stopped believing when God allowed evil to enter into his home. He believed. And that's what saw him through the trial and tribulation of his whole life, to the end of the story where God restores everything and increases it because of his faith. So what kind of human being can go through life without any sense of meaning, without any sense of purpose? Two little vignettes. One is with St. Patrick. St. Patrick, of course, we know converted all of Ireland. The Druids were a group of pagans who worship trees. Must be nice in spring, but beyond that, I'm not quite sure what turns you on with that. But that's what they were. They were pagans. They didn't believe in anything other than themselves and worshiping trees. Good for them. But when Patrick came onto the island, he said, no, that's insufficient. You need to believe. You need to believe in the one true God and in the person Jesus Christ, who is the way, the truth, and the life. And so he spent his entire life bringing about the conversion of Ireland. The only way that conversion would occur is if he could get into a meeting with the High King of all of Ireland. Now in Ireland at the time of Patrick, there were little kings all over the place in their territories, but there was a High King, the chief king. And what he said went, because he had the most power, he had the most army, he had the most money. That's usually how that works. So Patrick, of course, sensing this reality, says, I need an audience with the High King. Well, he gets an audience with the High King and converts him to the Christian faith, to the Catholic faith. And in doing that, he has to baptize him. And what's very interesting in the baptism of Patrick is that, of course, you know, every bishop has a staff. And it's crooked to symbolize the fact that he's a shepherd and that he's responsible for his sheep and to keep them from straying from the faith and to be away from danger. Well, Patrick was at advanced age by the time he had met the High King to bring about total conversion to Catholicism of Ireland. And so when he was baptizing the king at the ceremony, all the little kings were there, and the place was packed with people who wanted to do what the High King was commanding them to do, which was to love this new Jesus, this new God, this new purpose in life. The thing is that Patrick, being old, he not only used the staff as a symbol of his being a shepherd, but he also used it to help him walk. So therefore, on the bottom of his staff was a very pointed edge so that he wouldn't slip while he was walking and traversing the trails of Ireland. And so, like every good bishop, to emphasize his point during the homily about how valuable a relationship with Jesus Christ, how important it was, he took up his staff because he was standing next to the high king who was seated on his throne and slammed it down to emphasize his point. Well, it went into the foot of the high king. The high king made no noise. He didn't grimace because he's a tough guy. That's why he got to be high king. And he did nothing to emphasize at all that anything unusual had happened during the baptismal ceremony. Afterwards, Patrick realized that his foot was bleeding. He goes, "How's your foot bleeding?" He says, "Well, you took your staff and you rammed it into my foot during the baptismal ceremony." He said, "But you didn't cry out." He goes, "No." He goes, "Well, you didn't say anything afterwards." He goes, "No." He goes, "Well, why not?" And the high king said, "I just thought it was part of the ceremony." That's one vignette. Somebody who understands that there's more to himself, that the ritual and the idea of baptism and all the things that come with a relationship to Jesus Christ seemed greater than any kind of particular personal pain he might suffer. And if this is what was required of him as the high king and a person who would lower himself and humble himself in Jesus Christ and be baptized and bring about his whole kingdom to that, so let it be. What kind of man lives in this world without any purpose or direction? Well, certainly not the High King of Ireland, who brought about a conversion to Catholicism of that whole island. We can't say that that's the case that's very strong right now in Ireland, but certainly it was 1,800 years ago. The other story was a funeral I did a couple months ago now of a young man who died from several diseases that he had and problems that he had. He was a fallen away Catholic. He was not a member of this parish, but he didn't have anyone to bury him. When the family had called, a small little group of practicing Catholics within the whole family, and asked, would you be willing to bury him? So I said yes. So we had the funeral for him here in the church. And I was astonished. And it brought to mind a reality of how unchurched our country is. Because as the Mass proceeded, more and more young people came into the church, and they're all Hispanic, but many of them were tatted, the symbols on their necks, teardrops on their eyes, so I knew they were all gang members. They were very polite. This is sacred ground, so they tend to be pretty cool about everything. I spoke, as I would at any funeral, about looking at our own life, that the chance of a funeral is a time for us to reflect on where we're at. What kind of life are we leading? What kind of human being are we? Are we sensing purpose in who we are? And when communion time came, sensing the fact that there were 270 young people here in the church, and I was pretty clear in my spirit that most of them hadn't been to confession in a long time or even to church, I said what I normally do at weddings and funerals, which is, if you've been away from the church for a long time, don't come up for communion, but if you'd like a blessing, just cross your arms, and the deacon and I would be more than happy to bless you. Well, 6 people came up for communion out of some 270. And probably another handful of young people came up for the blessing, just 4 or 5. Out of all that, I couldn't help but reflect sadly that my sense in the Spirit, and without knowing the intention of their hearts, but pretty clear by the practice of their lives, that God and obedience to God was not something that was part of who they were. And although this may have been sacred ground for them, a holy place, the Holy of Holies was no longer here. What kind of man or woman lives in this world without any sense of purpose or direction? I propose to you that the Christian faith is the only means by which that purpose can be had. It is the only means by which one feels and knows completely of the love, the total love, the complete love of God for us. For his desire that we be saved, his desire that we go to heaven, his desire that we not be lost, his desire that we walk with him in this world. And to recognize that anxiety and depression and suicide and pornography and sexual misbehavior and all the rest of the things that we do in this world, cheating, lying, stealing, war, thrust upon us all, are not the things that God desires for people who say they have purpose because they believe in God. And so I want to say this to you. As a preacher, like St. Paul says in the second reading, preaching the fullness of the gospel, don't let anyone or anything drive you away from the church. I love it when I hear people say, I didn't leave the church left me. Hogwash. I'll say it again, hogwash. That's a crock of baloney. The church doesn't leave you. You consciously decide to leave the church for whatever reason. Sometimes there may even be valid conditions that you still haven't worked out. And in obedience, haven't learned to submit to God's eternal plan. Don't let anyone inside the church drive you away. Don't let anyone outside the church pull you away from the church. Don't let your professors in school tell you. Don't let your teachers in school tell you. Don't let your parents who aren't practicing the faith tell you, and your friends tell you. Why don't you be a person with purpose in the world? A person who has identity, that has confidence, that has surety and certainty that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. That Jesus Christ is the only means. That Jesus Christ is the way to heaven. That Jesus Christ died on the cross for me, that I might have life eternal. Because God loved me so much and never stops loving me. God does not leave us. We leave God. And for the Christian, we can't be that way. We need to understand the value of the Eucharist. We need to understand the value of eating the body and blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus. We need to see the value of the saints who intercede for us. We need to see the value of the gospel and the good news. Yes, bad things happen. There's bad people in the church and outside of the church. There's people who say they profess and are leading double lives. Of course, that's going to happen. Sometimes we're betrayed by our friends, family members, sometimes even our parents or our children. These are the realities of life. But we don't stop believing in God because of it. It isn't God who thrusts evil on us. We do that when we project our inner conflicts onto the world around us. And then we have the audacity to blame God for it. As if all he is some vindictive creature on a throne in heaven, waiting to make sure your life is a pain. That's not the God I worship. That's not the God I love. So when the tough times come, the difficulties arrive, the struggles are there, the temptations seem to be overwhelming, don't give in to the lies of the devil. He laughs every time one of us falls. He chuckles to himself at the stupidity that we embrace so that we don't love God. Instead, are at odds with him. What kind of human being lives in this world without any purpose? I propose to you there is a purpose, and he is Jesus Christ. He lives. He is risen from the dead, and he reigns on high. He is Lord. He is God. He is the Son of God. He is our salvation. There is no other path to eternity but through Jesus Christ. But through Jesus Christ. And I'm going to say it one more time. Not through Mohammed, who is a false god. Not through Allah, who is a false god. Not through the Druids of the old ways. Not the pagans of today. Not psychiatry. Not anything else. Not false teachers. Not liars. Not tricksters. Jesus Christ. He's the only solution. He is the King of Kings. So when you feel like moving away from the church, remember, when you move away, the church is always here. You need to decide to come back and be one again with our Lord. Go to confession. Be one with Him. Unite yourself to Him. He is the only purpose you need. And I guarantee you that when the troubles come, the temptations are there, the vices overwhelm, I can guarantee you that if you have a friendship with the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, He'll see you through it. He'll be there and walk with you. He'll hold you when you fall. He'll pick you up so you can be firm again. He will give you the grace you need. Do not abandon the church. Do not abandon your friends. Do not abandon God. Remember, He desires us to be with Him forever. The kind of person who survives in this world is the one who has purpose and understands their destiny, which is heaven with God, while we strive to live well as good human beings in the world He has given us.